In 1918, only 134 ships are lost in convoys.
Divers have made quite a discovery off Nantucket Island in Massachusetts, the wreck of a German U-boat.
This story begins with a dive into history at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
The wreck is 230 feet down in cold, murky water.
Incredibly, under the cold, dark waters of the Atlantic, a familiar wartime pattern suddenly appeared amidst the calm sediments. The steel structure appeared as if it was waiting for someone to discover it, opening up a series of data that made experts stop and reconsider everything they had recorded. Let's see what that pattern was that had the scientific community so surprised. The U-869 was a Type C-40 class submarine, one of the longest-range designs produced by Nazi Germany in the final stages of World War II. Its nearly 250-foot length and ability to carry multiple torpedoes made it a viable vessel for covert missions at sea. The specifications of this class of ships were built for voyages lasting several weeks, requiring endurance in harsh conditions. The tight compartment design reflected Germany's strategic requirements during the period when far-field operations were a priority. The Atlantic War of the Year was a time of intense fighting in the U-869 era. U-boats were tasked with cutting off Allied shipping, becoming a vital tool in the German effort to maintain naval superiority. Ships like U-869 often operated without reliable communications, resulting in many missions being recorded incorrectly. This created large gaps in the records and led to much confusion about the whereabouts of lost ships. U-869 was originally ordered to move to Gibraltar in early 1945, where Allied activity had increased markedly. Later documents record an unexpected diversion order being issued in late 1944. The change in mission has thrown the ship's route data into disarray. War records show the ship's new destination as being dozens of miles off the coast of New Jersey, but there are no detailed logs to show that the ship actually headed that way. U-869 lost contact after January 1945, as the Nazi regime began to descend into its final stages of chaos. The communication breakdown left the ship's final location unclear in war reports. Wartime archives record the sinking of a German ship near Gibraltar, believed to be U-869. This conclusion is based on speculation, as no other ships were recorded missing around the same time in that area. The existence of the Secret Navigation Command has led later researchers to doubt the accuracy of the old assessment. The failure to find any debris in Gibraltar further suggests that the initial data may not have been properly verified. The U-869's crew of 56 young sailors operated under long, stressful conditions. They often spent weeks at sea with little access to natural light and in constant danger of attack from Allied forces. The sailors' families were only reported missing without a specific location, making the U-869 story one of many unsolved cases that have lingered for decades. Their names were etched into the memorial without any clear indication of what happened. The ship's disappearance has sparked much debate in the military research community. The discrepancies between reports suggest that wartime record-keeping was plagued by poor communication. The void that existed around the U-869 became the impetus for technical divers and historians to begin field surveys. Studying the wreck was the only way to verify all the information from old sources. Life on U-boats during this period was severely restricted, reflecting the pressures of war on young men. The cramped spaces, lack of oxygen, and erratic temperatures made each voyage both physically and mentally challenging. These notes form a natural transition into the actual search undertaken by diving teams decades after the war ended. Journey of search. The investigation began in 1991, when technical divers John Chatterton and Richie Kohler noticed unusual sonar signatures off the coast of New Jersey. A large metal structure located at a depth of about 230 feet became the center of their attention. This initial detection marked the start of a long-term effort that would span years, involving dozens of dives, extensive planning, and a growing network of specialists who gradually joined the project. The team understood from the beginning that the site held more than ordinary debris, and the early signals suggested a vessel that carried significant historical weight. The wreck lay far from shore, creating logistical challenges for every mission. Strong currents pushed divers off course, and the low temperatures at depth reduced working time underwater. Visibility often dropped to only a few feet, forcing divers to approach the structure slowly to avoid collisions. Mixed gas techniques became a necessity because the depth made traditional air mixtures unsafe for extended operations. Every dive required precise calculations from descent rates to decompression stops, turning each mission into a carefully orchestrated sequence. The first explorations focused on documenting the general outline of the wreck. The steel structure showed signs of long-term corrosion, and its surface was covered with thick layers of marine growth. The dimensions and curvature of the hull indicated that this was not a commercial ship. Time had erased most identifying markers, leaving the divers with impressions rather than clear information. Still, the overall geometry of the structure pointed to a submarine. Early recoveries produced small clues. Several pieces of equipment carried German markings, including metric inscriptions and design features typical of mid-20th century engineering. These hints suggested a U-boat, but none of the retrieved objects contained direct evidence of which submarine it might be. The team continued to record every detail in the hope that cumulative data would eventually reveal the vessel's identity. Conditions at the site turned every dive into a high-risk undertaking. Narrow corridors created tight spaces where only one diver could pass at a time. Sections of the hull had collapsed inward, forming sharp angles and trapping loose wiring. Fishing nets draped across parts of the wreck created hazards that could entangle divers during exit. A small mistake in this environment had the potential to escalate quickly, so the team used strict protocols to ensure that ascent procedures remained predictable and safe. Filming the site required advanced lighting systems capable of cutting through the darkness. Cameras had to operate under high pressure, and the sediment that rose with each movement blurred many recordings. The divers positioned lights at strategic angles to illuminate interior spaces, creating visual references for mapping the compartments. Even when images were unclear, every frame contributed to a growing archive that documented the state of the wreck. As the team entered interior compartments, the internal layout became unmistakable. The arrangement of bunks, control panels, pipes, and valves aligned with wartime German submarine design. The absence of nameplates or serial numbers kept the submarine's identity uncertain, and the team referred to it informally as the ghost ship. This label reflected both the mystery surrounding the wreck and the silence of official wartime records that left no clear explanation for its presence near New Jersey. Subsequent dives expanded the search for identifying traces. Every object from simple utensils to mechanical components was examined and recorded. This systematic approach produced a breakthrough when a butter knife was recovered from a living area. The handle carried the name Horenberg, a surname found in German naval personnel lists. Archival research showed that an individual with that name had served aboard U-869, providing the first concrete link between the wreck and a submarine previously believed to have been lost near Gibraltar. The discovery prompted a re-examination of wartime diversion orders. Historical documents indicated that U-869 may have received instructions redirecting its route, creating a scenario in which the submarine never reached its intended destination. This interpretation aligned with the evidence found at the site. The match between physical artifacts and archival records marked a major step toward confirming the submarine's true identity. Images collected throughout the survey added valuable information about the condition of the hull and internal systems. Engineers and historians reviewed the photographs to evaluate structural deformation, mechanical damage, and possible causes of sinking. The divers focused on documenting objects that retained original positioning, allowing later studies to reconstruct events inside the submarine during its final moments. Each expedition carried significant physical and technical challenges, but the team's persistence expanded the available data set. Advancements in diving technology during the 1990s supported deeper access. Trimix mixtures improved safety, and sonar equipment enhanced mapping precision. Gradually, images of sleeping quarters, control rooms, and torpedo storage sections emerged, revealing details about daily life aboard the submarine. Successive surveys built a comprehensive foundation for deeper exploration inside the wreck. The preserved interior, combined with external artifacts and layout patterns, formed a valuable collection of information that enabled the team to prepare for a full internal assessment of the submarine's intact sections. Life frozen. The interior of the U-869 remains remarkably intact, thanks to the cold, low-oxygen environment at the bottom of the sea. When divers first entered the compartments, the metal structure and insulation still maintained their shape, demonstrating a level of natural preservation beyond expectations. The compartments were laid out in a row, reflecting the optimal design for long-duration missions of Nazi submarines. Narrow passageways and the careful use of every available space created the tight living conditions typical of U-boats in the late World War II. The living area clearly shows the limitations of space. The bunk beds are placed close together with many personal belongings rotting, but still evoking how sailors organized their lives in extremely cramped conditions. Some items, such as rolled blankets, notebooks, and textiles, have weakened over time, but still retain their overall shape, demonstrating the stability of the seafloor environment that allowed them to survive for decades without completely disintegrating. In addition, many metal items such as spoons, knives, and food cans remained relatively intact. The presence of these items suggests that the living quarters were not heavily disturbed before the ship sank. As divers went deeper, they picked up traces of small items such as leather gloves, lighters, and pieces of personal gear. Although oxidized, their shape and material still identified them as belonging to the wartime crew. Some items bear signs of simple entertainment, such as harmonicas or sealed decks of cards, suggesting efforts to maintain morale in the claustrophobic environment. This reflects the mundane aspects of sailors even when operating in a combat environment. The control area retains many typical German submarine instruments, such as pressure gauges, electrical switches, and navigation systems. Labels in German are still clearly visible, showing the operating procedures before the accident. The arrangement of the cockpit shows that the captain and crew operated in strict order. Long exposure to water pressure has altered some surfaces, but many details have retained their original positions, supporting the reconstruction of the ship's operations. In the torpedo storage area, the launch tubes were found to be closed. This condition suggests that there was no trace of a torpedo launch just before the ship sank, contributing to the theory of an internal accident rather than an external fight. Some of the debris found here shows damage from within the hull. While not enough to determine the cause, it fits the profile of incidents involving faulty torpedoes that were common in the late stages of the war. Personal belongings scattered throughout the hold suggest the crew had little time to prepare for the incident, reinforcing the assessment that the situation unfolded quickly and unexpectedly, limiting any response efforts. Dining area items such as plates and food containers are placed in a less cluttered position. This creates an image of unfinished activities, as if all activities were interrupted the moment the ship encountered a problem. The overall interior of U-869 provides a visual glimpse into the life of a U-boat at the end of World War II. The fact that the items are still in their original positions suggests that the ship's environment did not undergo major external shock. These records provide a detailed assessment of how the crew operated and lived under the harsh conditions. Each item provides additional information to reconstruct the operating environment before the ship disappeared. The entire interior space creates a form of frozen time, reflecting the last moments of the crew without any outside interference. This helps to consolidate a lot of data in technical and historical research. From here, the details of the ship's interior provide the basis for further analysis of the cause of the sinking identification evidence and the connection between the site and the surviving war documents. This is a natural transition into the assessment of the historical findings. Shocking discoveries. The artifacts recovered from U-869 provided an important data set for comparison with the Germania Werft factory records. The hull engineering and internal design matched the Type N C-40 standard, confirming the ship's origins with visual evidence. Several recovered personal items clearly linked to the crew list. Names carved into butter knife handles, decaying papers, and uniforms bearing identifying marks have helped identify members who served on U-869, filling in the missing personnel data in the war records. Many of these items are tied to individual cases, reflecting the health duties and service of the crew. These details help to reconstruct a clearer picture of the personnel than wartime archives. The most important finding from the scene was the damage to the ship's internal hull. Deformations from the inside of the steel hull indicated internal force consistent with a faulty torpedo, rather than signs of an attack from depth charges or shells at sea. The circling run problem was a common occurrence with German torpedoes in World War II, causing them to turn around and detonate near the launching vessel. Many features of U-869 fit this pattern, especially in the area where the launch tubes were still sealed at the wreckage. Traces of localized fire and explosions within the forward part of the hull and the disintegration of materials spreading from the inside out provide further evidence to support the internal accident hypothesis. This eliminates the possibility of being sunk by Allied forces at the time of disappearance. The salvage information also refutes the old U.S. Navy report of the destruction of U-869 near Gibraltar. The great distance between the two locations and the lack of any on-site evidence at Gibraltar suggests that the previous conclusion was made in the absence of facts. Comparing war records and survey data, researchers confirmed that a secret diversion order in late 1944 likely sent U-869 on a different course than originally planned, a key factor in explaining the ship's presence off the coast of America. The recovered documents contribute to reconstructing the ship's final journey. From the moment it left port, the technical condition and operational characteristics of the ship, to the possibility of an accident, all are recreated with a higher level of detail than before the wreck was found. Images collected from inside the ship help to strengthen the human archive, providing information about the lives and working conditions of the crew. This adds a real-life perspective that wartime documents do not fully capture. The discoveries are of great significance for the history of the German Navy. U-boats were a key force in the Atlantic War, so the recovery of a lost case like U-869 becomes an important data point in the overall assessment of U-boat activity at the end of the war. The remaining technical evidence supports research into the safety of German torpedoes from this period. The potential incident on U-869 illustrates the higher risk involved in the use of self-propelled weapons in the late war when production quality suffered due to resource shortages. Documents and artifacts also provide a new perspective on wartime record-keeping. The misreporting of U-869's location provides a lesson in the inaccuracy of information in the context of widespread conflict, forcing researchers to be cautious when relying on old documents. The match between field data and technical records allowed for independent confirmation of the ship's identity, paving the way for a re-evaluation of other U-boat disappearances that may have had similar circumstances. Besides its historical value, the discovery of U-869 also provides a deeper humanistic perspective. Personal items in the ship's hold clearly reflect the existence of young sailors caught up in the vortex of war, leaving their last traces on the seabed. Items such as family photos, notes, and household items became sources of data that helped to better understand the psychological pressures of U-boat crews. They also showed that they were ordinary people placed in a harsh war machine. Accurate identification also helps ensure their sacrifice is fully recorded in historical documents, which is vital to the ongoing process of documenting the war for families and archival institutions. Ultimately, the discovery underscores the importance of field surveys in the study of military history. Data from the seafloor helps correct decades-old discrepancies and sets the stage for similar studies in the future. The decoding of U-869 has filled in gaps in World War II records, demonstrating the vital role that fieldwork plays in reconstructing historical truth. What has been discovered at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean has not only confirmed the identity of a ship, but also restored the story of forgotten sailors. If you want to continue exploring war secrets, deep-sea discoveries, and documents that have been hidden for decades, subscribe to the channel today so you don't miss any of the discoveries.